Hi there. I'm outside today. I couldn't resist being outside in the sunshine. It's such a beautiful day today, and I love being out in God's kingdom in a way. So I'm back with Women Who Encountered Jesus. We're talking about a dead girl and a sick woman who whose stories are told in Luke 8, Mark 5, and Matthew 9. So three gospel writers tell us about this story. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We've read it a couple of times, but I'm going to just refresh your memory a little bit that um, Jesus had returned from doing other miracles on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and he came across in a boat. And eventually, when he got there, all these crowds surrounded him. He was really pressed in by people, and he was walking along, and a very powerful person, one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus, came up and fell at his feet and said, "My daughter is sick. She's dying. I need you to come to my house and heal her. Please, Lord." So Jesus and Jairus started to walk to probably quickly to get to Jairus' house. On the way, Jesus stopped because he felt power go out of him. And we hear the story of this sick woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years, hemorrhaging. She decides that she's going to worm her way through the crowds and get to Jesus. And if she feels if she can just touch his cloak, just the hem of his robe, that she's going to be healed. And that's exactly what happens. But Jesus knows that this has happened. He feels the power. He knows exactly who he's healed. He stops right where he is, and he wants to know who touched him. I think it's interesting to me because Jairus and Jesus were on a mission. They were going right over to Jairus' house. I know what it's like to be on a mission. My family teases me all the time about this. If I am off to the grocery store and I'm getting my purse together and I want to make sure I got my drink of water with me and wearing my sunglasses and da-da-da-da, and they'll go, "Oh, get out of the way, KK's on a mission." They tease me about it. Or if I'm looking for something, I lost my glasses or I can't find my cell phone and I'm searching the house. Look, KK's on a mission. When somebody's on a mission, they're single-mindedly going forward towards that one objective. And that's how I get, I guess, single-minded. And it's obvious in my actions. So Jesus would have been on a mission, and Jairus would have been right there with him. "Come on, Jesus, let's get to my house." And suddenly he stops. Jesus just stops for the sake of this one sick woman. One little lost, obscure woman in a sea of people, a crowd of people. And he says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples are like, "What? How? What do you think? You can't tell who touched you. There's hundreds of people here." No, one person is who I care about, is what he's really saying. Who touched me? He wants the woman to identify herself because he wants to acknowledge her faith. He wants to have a one-on-one interaction with her. He doesn't want it to be just the hem of his cloak. He wants to tell her he knows she has faith. And what's great about that is that God is like that. Despite the fact that he loves all of us, he loves each of us. And each of us is the most important person at that moment. So if we look at Matthew 18, Jesus tells a little parable that kind of illustrates this. He says, "What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he's happier about that one sheep than the 99 who did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish." Jesus cares about each little one, even the one that wanders away. Sure, he loves the 99. He's not saying he doesn't love the 99. He's just saying that he's willing to stop for the one obscure person who needs him. So here is a rich, powerful synagogue leader who probably has lots of influence and could be influential in Jesus' ministry. And they're on a mission together, and Jesus stops for the one obscure woman who no one else cares about. She's unclean. In Jewish way of looking at things, she's unclean. She's probably been shunned, avoided by the rabbis, by the people in power, by the synagogue leaders. Wonder how she feels then. She must feel unbelievably full of awe. She must be just like astounded. Well, when you know she's trembling with fear, the Bible says she's trembling with fear when he says, who touched me? Who touched me? And she trembled with fear when she came to him because maybe she was afraid he was going to give her a hard time about doing that. I don't know. Or maybe, Mark 5:33 says the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. I've been bleeding. I touched you. It healed me instantly. Maybe she's afraid that she's going to be in trouble because of this, because being unclean, she touched him. I don't know. But I do know she was fearful. Maybe just because she's called out, a woman called out in front of this whole crowd of people, telling her story. It was not a very polite story to talk about bleeding. I'm sure that wouldn't have been, something talked about in mixed company, So we don't know why, or maybe just the awe of what had happened to her. Just that, oh my gosh, I'm healed, that kind of thing. She was just full of fear. And she just fell right at his feet. So she had unbelievable feelings at that point of gratitude and praise and awe. How do you think Jairus was feeling, though, at this point? I think he was probably frustrated, maybe even angry at the delay. Come on, Jesus, we're on a mission. We're heading to my daughter. My daughter, oh, come on. She's the most important thing in the world to me, One of the gospel writers tells us she's only 12 years old. 12, Lord, she's just a little thing. Come on. And while they were talking, in verse 35 of Mark, it says, while they were still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Too late. Basically what they're saying. Too late, Jesus. You missed your opportunity. I'm sure that Jairus would have been devastated, totally disconsolate, and maybe even a little angry. I was here, Jesus. We were only steps away from my house. If you would have just kept on going, maybe we could have gotten there in time. But instead, you stopped and you talked to this woman who is a nothing, So to Jesus, the nothing is a something. If you think you're a nothing, you're a something to Jesus. And he cares more about you than he does the rich and the powerful. It's not what it's all about with Jesus. But still, Jairus doesn't say anything at this point. At least the gospel writers don't give us that he said anything. So Jesus actually overheard what was happening here. This person from the household, I don't know, servant or something, had come to tell Jairus, too late, So overhearing what they said, this is verse 36, overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid. Just believe and your daughter will be healed. So 3 things he said. First of all, don't let your fear get in the way. Second of all, just believe. Faith is the most important thing. Just talked to this woman about it. It's her faith that healed her. So just have some faith. So first of all, don't be afraid. Second of all, your faith will heal you. Your faith is what's important. And then third of all, your daughter's going to be healed. He's trying to tell him, number one, don't let your feelings get in the way. So often we do this, don't we? We let our feelings get in the way. We let what we see and know and hear drown out our faith. Happens to me almost daily, so I'm sure it must happen to you. And all we can do at that point is just pray for faith. Just pray, Lord, I don't believe, and help my unbelief, because I know that I should believe. I do love you, I do trust you, but I don't have enough faith right now. I'm weak. And we just need to know that when we're weak, we need to lean on Jesus' strength, because he knows what we're going through. But what he says to Jairus, to me it sounds so easy. Well, your daughter died? Oh, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just believe she's going to be healed. I mean, there's a difference between something being easy and something being simple. This is a simple thing. Jesus, so much of what Jesus teaches us is simple. Very simple. Just don't get upset. Have faith. she'll be healed. Okay, that's simple. It's not easy though. It's never easy. When something like your daughter is dead hits you, yeah, it's pretty hard then not to be afraid. It's pretty hard not to be doubting, not to have a lack of faith, to still believe that even though she's already died, that Jesus is still in control of the situation. We're not sure why, but for some reason, Jesus didn't want the crowds to come at this point. He didn't want them to be there. So in verse 37, it says, he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. These three disciples are very often the three that he keeps the closest to him, Peter, James, and John. And those are the only three that he wants to take with him. He doesn't even really take the other disciples with him. And he definitely doesn't want to take the crowds with him. I'm going to see if the other gospel writers say this. No, Matthew doesn't mention this, but I think Luke does. Let's see. Yep. It says, this is verse 51, when he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. So at this point, for some reason, Jesus does not want the crowds to all be with him and around him. One of the reasons, I think, is that there's a lot of commotion there at this particular house. So let's read what Mark has to say about this. Let's see, this is Mark 5, verse 39. Or let's start at 37. He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing?" I just love it. What's this all about? It's such a great thing. It's kind of like what we would do if we walked in and it was just chaos, commotion, wailing, mourning. Matthew, it gives us a little bit more information, and he says, when Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house, he saw a noisy crowd and people playing pipes. So, there was musicians, there was people crying, there was people wailing, there was people milling around, probably consoling. At that culture, mourning was very important, and wailing was considered to be respectful to the dead. If you didn't wail and mourn, then that was supposed to be disrespectful. So lots of times people even hired professional mourners. And the professional mourners were paid to come in and do a lot of the mourning and wailing that was going on for the dead person. So that would have been typical of that time. But he came in and he said, what is all this commotion? What are you all upset about? He said, go away. This girl is not dead, but asleep. This girl is not dead, but asleep. Of course she is dead. What does he mean by this then? He's not saying that they're wrong. I think what he's saying is, I have power over death. She's not completely dead because I'm here. And there's always life when I'm here, She's just asleep. Death is like sleep to Jesus, He doesn't make a big deal about it. It's just another thing that he has power over. But look at their reaction. This is he said, go away, this girl is not dead but asleep. And they laughed at him. They laughed at him. Oh, that just breaks my heart. I can't imagine laughing at Jesus. The other thing is, Jesus has just done all these other miracles. He's just healed this woman. He just came over from the other side of the Sea of Galilee where he healed a man over there. He's been doing a lot of ministry around here. And apparently these people haven't heard about it, because when he says she's not dead, she's only asleep, they think that's a big joke. They must have, when it says they laughed, I'm guessing they kind of sneered in a way, The laughing, I don't think it was jovial laughing, but it was like, yeah, sure, They laughed at him. I just think that's a crucial thing to think of, because a lot of times, this is Matthew Matthew's account in verse 53 says, they laughed at him knowing that she was dead. They laughed at him knowing that she was dead. So they're sneering. They're saying, yeah, you don't think she's dead. You just think she's asleep. Ha 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 ha. You know, we'll show you. Wait till you see how dead she is, you know. So I don't know. I guess this happens to us a lot when we say a statement of faith to someone who isn't a believer. You say, well, I think prayer changes things. I gave up on that a long time ago. You know, people sneer, people laugh. It's tough, you know, it's tough. But it doesn't stop Jesus. He just moves the crowds away and goes to see the girl. We need to recognize that laughter, sometimes people laugh because they are afraid to believe. You know, they're afraid to have faith. Maybe their faith has been shaken in the past. But we don't always need to, how should I say it, verbally respond to someone else's sneering or laughter. Sometimes we just need to let it be what it is and go on with what we believe and what we know to be true. And that seems to be what Jesus is going to do here. The people are laughing, but he's just going to ask them to leave the room and he's going to go do his thing. So we're going to read some more about that and talk some more about that in the next session when the actual resurrection of the dead girl is going to take place. It's exciting. Have a day of faith. And have a day of just trusting the Lord to give you enough faith, even when it doesn't feel like you have enough of your own. Have a blessed day.